Welcome to the Mixed Race Belonging podcast, where we explore the intersection of mixed identity and belonging through the lens of somatics and personal and collective liberation to help you heal your belonging wounds and build relationships where you can show up as your full-ass self. I'm your host, Raina LaGrand, an embodiment coach for mixed race people with a background as a trauma therapist, yoga teacher, and health educator. The tools and insights I share with you here are the approach that has not only helped me heal my belonging wound, but also helped me help my mixed race clients do the same. We all need something good to belong to right now. Relationships and spaces where we feel safe, held, seen, heard, and dignified. Thanks for being here, and let's get started with today's show. Intro music, come be the man I need. I'm so sorry, y'all, about my silliness. And if you just totally think my little intro music joke is cringy, but you know what? I love it. I love being silly, and I'll probably phase it out at some point. I'll get tired of it, and or actually get a little intro music. That would be fun. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you all today about the exact process that I walk my clients through and hope that you're enjoying the podcast so far. Just a reminder that I do have a survey, both about just your experience with belonging as a mixed person and also like what would be helpful for me to be covering on the podcast or to just know to better improve my programs and all that jazz. So don't hesitate to fill out that survey or just reach out to me. I'm really grateful for the positive feedback that I've gotten already on the podcast. And this has just really been such an exciting process for me. So thanks for being here. So like I said, today I'm going to talk with you about the exact process that I walk my clients through. So basically what we do in one-on-one coaching as well as belonging building blocks. It's the same curriculum, but delivered in slightly different formats. The benefit to belonging building blocks is that it's a group experience and you get to connect with other mixed folks. The benefit of one-on-one is that we really get to dive into your unique experience and kind of go off script sometimes and really take our time, and you get a lot more like personal attention. So right now my doors are open, my calendar is open for one-on-one clients, and yeah, this episode's going to give you a peek into what working together looks and feels like. So my approach, there are 4 pillars that I use in my approach, and I call them pillars because they are all equally important in my work, and they are all always there. They're not necessarily linear processes that we move through. There is a little bit of like a linear process, but also, we're complex, emergent beings, and I think like we need the flexibility to be able to dance between the pillars. So I'm going to talk about each of them today, and yeah, hopefully that will be really helpful for you. So just to kind of overview, the 4 pillars are somatic attunement, embracing multiplicity, relational skill building, and grief tending. So let's start with somatic attunement. And often this actually is where we start because I am a somatic practitioner. This is a somatic coaching program. And one of the primary goals is for you to be in deeper relationship with your body. And I want you to feel connected to your body in this way for a couple reasons. Because, I want you to know how to care for yourself, how to care for your emotions, and how to respond when you're triggered, which is often a lot of like what prompts folks to start with me is feeling triggered and overwhelmed and distressed. But I also want you to actually be connected to what feels good in your body. What are you longing for? What are you reaching for when it comes to feeling more secure in your identity, cultivating belonging, having connections that feel satisfying, right? Because here's the thing. Colonialism and trauma, they disconnect us from our body. They disconnect us from what we want, what we need, what we're feeling, what we're interested in. And it is so common that people come to me having been really focused on what other people expect of them and what they need to be doing to fit in, or how they should act or how they shouldn't act, versus actually attuning to what's happening inside. So that brings me to that word, attunement. What is attunement? Attunement in the sort of like psychology and therapy world is often talked about as a process that we do with other people. When we attune to other people, we are noticing and respecting, and we're interested in their inner world and their experience. And in our relationships, attunement is actually how we build trust. Because think of it this way: when somebody really sees you and really gets you, you feel safe with them. You trust them, right? So attunement is also a process we can be in with ourselves, attuning to our inner world, our feelings, our thoughts, our sensations, the different parts of us, so that we can build trust with ourselves, self-trust, and also cultivate a sense of inner belonging, a sense of belonging to yourself and with yourself. And as we do this, my hope for you is to become a compassionate, nurturing witness. The kind of presence that you've always needed and deserved. Not that we can't want that from other people. Of course, we are going to work on the relationship and belonging, outer belonging piece, but also that you can be a witness to yourself. So one of the approaches that I integrate into my work is called parts work. It's a therapy approach that is based in neurobiology, that our mind is multiplicitous. There are different neural networks that share information and even like sometimes have competing thoughts and opinions about situations. And as we attune to what is happening inside and we start to understand the different parts of us, and maybe like how some parts of us show up in some places and some parts of us show in other places, we become that compassionate, open presence for our parts. The relationship that we have with ourselves, it's the longest relationship we are going to have in our entire lives, and it's one of the most important. So doing this attunement work and using parts work is a way that we can really deepen that relationship with ourselves, with our body, repair the relationship between our mind and our body, right? And the somatic attunement process also includes nervous system work. And I know nervous system work is real sexy right now. And it is important. It's not, I just want to like say nervous system work is not everything, right? There's so many other important systems in our body too. And I continue to learn about them as a practitioner. But yes, nervous system work has been really helpful, I know, for a lot of people around managing their emotions, managing their triggers, healing from trauma. And that is something that we absolutely bring into our work in coaching. And so I'm thinking of an example from a client who came to me and was really struggling to manage her anxiety, and she felt nervous, like her nervous system was always on high alert. And so she'd become quite the hermit, like socially. And in coaching, here's the thing. I taught her how to regulate her anxiety, sure, how to soothe herself, how to shake it out, how to get back to a place of feeling more regulated. But it also taught her through attunement and through being this compassionate witness, how to befriend her anxiety. Because the thing is, anxiety is a normal part of life. It's an important messenger that we can be in relationship with and respond to, so that, yeah, sure, when anxiety shows up, we do have tools around how to deal with it. But also, rather than being flooded, totally overwhelmed by it, or trying to outrun it completely, we can also have more capacity, more space for these feelings. Because going for the things that we want when it comes to belonging is going to necessarily bring up some anxiety. We're taking risks, we're putting ourselves out there. So we need a way to be like, oh, I'm feeling anxious. And that doesn't mean automatically I have to run, or I have to do this, or I have to do that. And when I was working with this client, she started to feel safer in her body. Anxiety didn't always signal danger to her anymore. And that actually empowered her, and she felt more prepared to seek out new connections, right? So sure, we are going to work on tools to help you not feel so much discomfort in your body and to feel safer in your body. And also to feel like you have more space. You can be that compassionate, nurturing, present witness to whatever is happening. And that can be okay. That can be okay. And that's another way that we build self-trust, is by feeling like, I got this. I'm attuned to my experience, and what I'm experiencing is okay. And when it's not okay, I know what to do with it. And I trust myself. I trust myself to set a boundary or put myself out there, be vulnerable with other people. So the somatic attunement piece is really key, and it is kind of where we often start. But like I said, we'll come back to it as well throughout the coaching process. Pillar number 2 is embracing multiplicity. And I know this is going to resonate with a lot of you, because as mixed people, it is very common for us to feel fragmented, we describe ourselves in that way too, right? I'm a quarter this, or I'm half that. I know a lot of the people that I work with feel like they have to pick and choose parts of like their ancestry to align with certain aspects of it over another, or to push away certain aspects of it, right? And even like you have to feel like you're performing sometimes. And so as we are attuning and becoming that compassionate witness to all the different parts of you, we're embracing multiplicity in those different parts of you, and also in your racial identity, in your ethnic identity, and your heritage. And I use a lot of nature-based analogies to help us with this, because we need to remember we are nature. We are natural. We are normal. It is normal in nature for new things to emerge, right? So our identity as mixed folks is an emergent identity. One of the analogies that I love to use the most is this idea of when rivers, where rivers converge. So the confluence of two rivers, and you can Google river confluences and see lots of beautiful images. There's some in particular that I really like that show two rivers that are very different colors. One might be kind of brown, one might be kind of blue. And this is due to the different like sediment and minerals in those different rivers. And so as they mix, as they come together, they actually don't mix immediately. Sometimes for a while downstream, the blue and the brown will run side by side. And what I find so powerful about these images is that it is not half of one river and half of the other river that is flowing into this new river. It's actually 100% of the water from each river flowing in and creating this like new layered experience that does kind of blend downstream, right? Eventually. And I just think that this shows that we can be 100% of all of our lineages. There is a saying, I think, that comes from the Aboriginal people in Australia. I could be wrong, but I saw this on social media. That coffee is still coffee, even if you put milk in it, right? Like the coffee doesn't go away just because it's like a lighter shade. So, and I think just thinking about nature too, it just puts us in touch with reconnecting with the natural world, which I think is something that is really important for all people, and can be really healing for us as mixed folks as well. And this is actually a great segue into the next pillar, which is relational skill building. And what I'll say is, how do I want to do this transition? There's like, my mind is going in two different places. So, first of all, one of the things that I work with folks is thinking about relationships and attachment more broadly, right? Our indigenous ancestors, all of our ancestors, no matter where we come from, all had deeper relationships with the natural world, with the earth, with land. And so part of like what we do is we work on repairing our relationship to earth and land, and seeing earth as a good enough like attachment figure, as seeing nature as equally valid sources of connection as other humans. But of course, I know that you're probably coming to me because you want to have different relationships, better relationships with humans too, right? And that's valid. So, in pillar 3, relational skill building, what we are working on is building relationships from a place of authenticity, right? And using that somatic attunement and the confidence we gain from embracing our multiplicity to show up as our full selves, so that we can attract the people who really do accept all of us, instead of doing that thing where we shapeshift to keep ourselves safe or meet other people's expectations of us, which is a totally normal adaptation, and you might still do sometimes. I even find myself doing it sometimes. But through this process of coaching, you will feel more capable of A, knowing what is authentic to you, and B, showing up that way in the world. One of the key frameworks that I use in my work is called the relational movement cycle, which I'll do a whole podcast episode or series on, but it's essentially these different relational movement patterns, such as pushing and reaching. And what we do is we use that framework to really assess, what are your like relational patterns? Do you tend towards pushing and like hyper autonomy? Do you tend towards like reaching and grasping and like kind of losing yourself because you're so desperate for connection? Do you toggle between the two, kind of going back and forth, ping ponging? Or do you have like a healthy balance of autonomy and connection? That is actually the goal, right? Is to be able to use both ends of the spectrum in a way that feels flexible and healthy and adaptive. So we really slow down. We use our somatic attunement skills to notice what your patterns are in relationships, and to get curious about what kind of story our body is telling through these patterns about our past relationships. What have we learned will keep us safe from harm or rejection? What has kept us in connection? And we explore what kind of support your body, your mind needs in order to like start to take risks of trying new patterns and practicing new skills, so that you can show up as your full self instead of completely crumbling or completely overriding what you want in order to just kind of like get through a moment. And this is another level of building self-trust, of tapping into your secure relationship with yourself and showing yourself that you can do hard things. I talk a lot about like taking risks in service of what you long for. And this is like really what like babies do. They are always like taking risks and playing and seeing like, what happens if I do this? What happens if I do that? What happens if I touch this? So we practice taking risks, and we can do so in a playful way, right? We can infuse play into it. We can be so serious with our like trauma shaping and belonging wound. And so we can bring some play into this. And so we work on also using our somatic attunement skills to really notice what's happening in our body when we're taking those risks, and discerning when we are safe from when we are in danger, and from when we are safe enough to take a risk. Maybe there is a risk, but we trust ourselves to feel whatever comes up. That's actually a question I pose to folks a lot is, are you afraid of actually being harmed? Or are you afraid of the feelings that will come up if you are vulnerable, if you are rejected? So I'm thinking about a client of mine who came to me struggling with belonging, and they felt really insecure about what other people thought of them as a mixed race Black person. And they would avoid Black centered spaces. And whenever they felt misunderstood, they would literally feel physically sick. So inside coaching, we used our somatic attunement skills to work, and nervous system skills to work on coping with the physical and the emotional feelings that would come up when they felt overwhelmed or triggered. And we also used relational skill building to gain the confidence to take risks, to gain and really build resilience, to take risks, to actually reach and enter Black centered spaces without shrinking themselves or overcompensating for what they felt like they didn't have. And as a result, they ended up feeling more confident about building relationships that felt good for them. And they felt like they could build relationships from a place of authenticity, which I think is just so beautiful. And the final pillar is focused on grief tending. So what I notice and I've learned over the course of my work as a therapist and as a coach for mixed folks is that often it's like the shame, the insecurity, or even rage, anger, resentment that's at the forefront of our emotional landscape. And some of that is because we've learned to internalize or even sometimes like super externalize what we are dealing with. We internalize it as like, this is what's wrong with me, or I'm never gonna belong, or we externalize it as like, F everyone else. Instead of kind of zooming out and recognizing the larger context of our belonging wound and why we're struggling, which to me is so rooted in the downstream impact of colonialism and cultural severance and mono-racism, right? And to me, there's actually so much grief there. There's so much grief that this is where we're at as like a society, as humanity, that we're all in that together. The belonging wound doesn't just belong to us as mixed race folks. Belonging is an issue for nearly everyone, at least I can at least speak for those of us in the West and the global North, right? And because we are so distanced from our cultural practices, from our ancestral lineages, we are severely under-practiced at grieving. The grief has been sort of put on us as individuals instead of the collective communal process that it was historically. You know, our ancestors had containers for processing grief, practices for processing grief. And so grief, I think, is a big doorway into reconnecting to our inherent interconnectedness, and it can be a doorway into reconnecting with our ancestors and ancestral wisdom. So in coaching, we build out practices for tending to and feeling held in your grief. Building an altar, doing radical ancestry like genealogy, experimenting with different spiritual practices, finding other people that you can learn from. And I know some of y'all might have some complicated feelings about that. Like, do I deserve to practice Taino spiritual practices or Ifa, right? And I think what holds me in that is zooming out and seeing that as a world, we need to be re-indigenized. Not just indigenous people or like those who we like see as indigenous, like Native Americans or something, right? But actually that we are deeply culturally wounded and disconnected from earth and animism and ancestors. And I think actually healing as a collective and creating a world where everyone belongs is going to require that we are reconnected to our indigeneity, essentially. So, and I think that doing this kind of work too is another relationship that you can build as, a source of support. So you've got, relationships with real live people here in front of you, relationships with earth, and relationships with ancestors. So these are the 4 pillars of my work with clients, and they are woven in throughout the whole process. We do begin with an opening ritual where we're going to begin to design your altar that you can return to for support throughout and after our work together. And in the first month, we are really focused on repairing that relationship between you and nature and the more than human world, so that you can really feel that deep connection to your inherent belonging here on earth. We are doing somatic attunement work, creating a toolkit of somatic and nervous system strategies that are going to help you feel more connected to yourself and more capable of responding to your emotions. And we're building resilience through different exercises designed to help you embrace all the layers of your identity. And after that first month of working together, you're going to feel safer in your body. You're going to start to release any shame that you've been carrying. And you're going to feel more prepared to handle whatever comes your way. And from there, over the following 12 sessions, we're going to start to build new relational skills by using that relational movement cycle. Stay tuned for that episode. By understanding and honoring what is already happening for you in your relationships, what patterns you're in, growing your capacity to grieve what has been lost or missing in your relationships as a multiracial person, and deepening your self-trust so that you can take risks in service of what you long for in your relationships and in your life. So there are a couple different ways to work with me in this process. One-on-one coaching, which can be a 4-month or a 6-month container, depending on whether you want all weekly sessions or 2 months of weekly sessions and then 4 months of every other week sessions. So it's 16 sessions total. Or you can work with me in Belonging Building Blocks, which is a group container, but that won't be reopening until early 2026, late winter, early spring. So if you're interested in working together, there's no need to wait. You can reach out for a sales call. You can book a sales call. It's a free 60-minute call where we're going to spend a lot of time me just hearing from you about what you're struggling with and what your goals are. And then I'll share with you what would coaching actually look like, because I have this curriculum, I use these pillars, but it's also one-on-one coaching. One of the benefits is it's deeply customizable to you, whether you need a little more support on the somatic attunement side or a little bit more support on the grief side, or there's specific relationship challenges that are coming up that you want to work through. So in that sales call, I'll share with you what coaching would look like, and then you can make a decision about whether you want to move forward. So I look forward to potentially seeing your name pop up on my calendar for a sales call. And if you have any other questions, you know where to find me, either on my website, on Instagram, on TikTok, via email, raina@mixedracebelonging.com. And I look forward to being in connection with you.